The sheriff was already halfway up the driveway when Marcus Bell stepped out of his garage, shirt soaked with sweat, sawdust clinging to his arms, holding a cordless drill, blue lights off, hand near the holster, a quiet kind of tension, the kind that doesn't need sirens to be loud. Across the street, a neighbor dropped her watering can. Another one lowered the blinds in slow motion. The sheriff didn't speak at first, just looked him over. "Got a call about a disturbance," he said. Marcus blinked. "You serious? HOA said you were threatening volunteers, harassing the board, refused to leave the clubhouse this morning." Marcus exhaled hard, his jaw flexed. "I showed up to vote. Sir, I need you to step back from the tools." He didn't move, because this wasn't about tools, or threats, or whatever nonsense the HOA had fed them. It was about control. And now they were using the sheriff's department as a scare tactic. Only problem? The sheriff had no idea who Marcus really was. 3 weeks earlier, everything had been normal. Marcus had spent his Saturday doing what he always did, working on his garage renovation project. He'd saved for months, bought reclaimed wood, salvaged cabinets from a school auction, and was slowly turning the space into a workshop. It was his outlet, his therapy, his peace. Then the HOA held a beautification initiative. They wanted all visible garage interiors to meet neighborhood presentation standards. Translation: clean, uniform, and empty. Marcus's garage didn't fit that vision. It was creative, lived in, functional. He didn't think much of it until they started showing up. First, it was the HOA secretary snapping photos from the sidewalk. Then came the clipboard inspections. Finally, a board member approached him directly. Her name was Janine Harland, president of the Briarwood Lake HOA, the type of person who smiled while issuing ultimatums. "Marcus, your workbench and shelving create visual clutter. It affects property values." "You mean my garage," he said. "It's visible from the street, which makes it a shared concern." Marcus laughed, then realized she wasn't joking. "You want me to tear it down? We'd prefer you align with community aesthetics. A plain garage, or install an interior privacy curtain. Something clean." Not happening. The conversation ended there, but the consequences didn't. 2 days later, his access to the community pool was suspended pending review. Then his parking permit was flagged for unauthorized use. He received no letters, no emails, just roadblocks. When he tried to speak during the next HOA meeting, Janine cut him off, twice. When he asked to see a copy of the new visual standard policy, he was told it was under internal review, and when he asked to vote, like every other resident, he was told the list had already closed. "You missed the registration window," Janine said. "We can't allow exceptions. You announced it yesterday. We're doing our best to manage participation." That was the moment Marcus raised his voice. Not yelled, not cursed, just raised it. "This is illegal." Janine didn't argue. She just picked up her phone and walked into the hallway. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy was knocking on his door. And now, here they were. Sheriff's boots on his driveway, hands hovering over cuffs. For voting, for questioning. Marcus stepped back from his tools, but never broke eye contact. "You want to arrest me for a garage remodel?" The deputy looked uneasy now. Something in Marcus's face. Familiar. "What's your name again?" he asked. "Bell." The deputy froze. "Your Aunt Janice's boy?" Marcus nodded slowly. Recognition spread across the sheriff's face. The tension broke like glass. "Marcus? Man, I didn't recognize you without the bowl cut." A beat passed, then a laugh. Nervous, guilty, real. "You're the cousin that used to eat hot dogs with ketchup at Thanksgiving. And you're the one who still owes me $20 from Monopoly in 2004. They stood in silence for a second. Then the deputy sighed. "I got played, didn't I?" "Welcome to Briarwood," Marcus said. Marcus Bell didn't retaliate with anger. He didn't threaten a lawsuit. He didn't start a petition. He didn't even post about it in the neighborhood forum, which was how most residents vented these days. He just went quiet, but not the defeated kind of quiet, the watching kind. Because the moment Sheriff Dalton left his driveway that afternoon, apologizing again, slapping Marcus on the back like they were back at Grandma Janice's for 4th of July, Marcus knew exactly what kind of game the HOA was playing. Janine Harland hadn't just crossed a line, she'd exposed the whole playbook. Weaponizing the sheriff's office wasn't just petty, it was dangerous. And if she was willing to do that just to keep a garage hidden from the street, Marcus had to wonder, what else had she done that no one knew about? So he started paying attention. That night, Marcus walked the neighborhood under a hoodie, No clipboard, no camera, just memory. Watching, noting. One house had solar panels installed last year, clearly visible from the road. No curtain, no citation. Still on the board. Another had turned their garage into a full-blown game room. Open every weekend. String lights, foosball table, neon open sign. Still on the board. Then there was the treasurer, whose side fence had been crooked for months. Visible warping. No fine, no fix. But two houses at the edge of the cul-de-sac, owned by newer families, had both been mysteriously left off the last community BBQ list, and both had visible violations. One had wind chimes, the other, a raised flower bed. Marcus didn't need a spreadsheet to see it. The rules weren't rules, they were weapons. And Janine was the one holding the blade, so Marcus started building something better. He called up a friend, Sam Torres, a city planner who owed him a favor. Back in college, Marcus had helped him move 3 times in 1 year. Sam didn't hesitate. You want community zoning history? You got it. Sam pulled every public record on Briarwood Lake's HOA charter, development permits, and board amendment filings. What they found was pure HOA theater. Janine had quietly pushed through an amendment 2 years ago that allowed the board to make aesthetic exceptions for properties deemed community cornerstones. It wasn't defined anywhere. There was no vote trail, and it gave the board unchecked power to approve or deny nearly anything: garage builds, lawn designs, even paint colors, on a whim. Worse, she'd used that clause to approve her own sunroom extension, without alerting the neighborhood. Marcus took the document to another old friend, Tasha Redding, a housing attorney who'd grown up on his street. She wasn't HOA focused, but she had teeth. She read the file, blinked twice, and said, "This smells like abuse of power." That's what I thought. Want my professional opinion? Hit me. You don't take this to court. No, you take it to the people. The next morning, Marcus did something Janine never expected. He volunteered, officially, signed up to join the HOA landscaping committee, showed up to every meeting, smiled, said nothing controversial, took notes, clapped when appropriate, and listened. He heard the vice president gripe about burnout. He heard 2 committee members argue about whether mulch should be red or brown, and he heard Janine micromanage everything from fountain budgets to fertilizer deliveries, like she was running a Fortune 500 company. Over the next few weeks, Marcus kept showing up. He brought water bottles to one cleanup event, power washed the gazebo at the community park, didn't say a word about his garage, just helped, quietly. Neighbors started to notice. He wasn't the angry guy with the tools anymore. He was helpful, friendly, present. When a neighbor's dog got loose, Marcus found it and walked it home. When the elderly couple on lot 14 needed help moving boxes, Marcus loaded them into his truck and made 2 trips, no questions asked. The shift was slow, but real, and while he was rebuilding trust outside, inside, he was gathering ammo, meeting minutes, expense approvals, photos, screenshots, witnesses. He was documenting every inconsistent ruling, every vendor contract, with no bidding process, every board member's home that violated the very same standards they enforced on others. He didn't leak it. Not yet, because Marcus wasn't ready to fight Janine on her turf. He was going to invite her to his. And this time, he'd have the whole neighborhood watching. The community meeting was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday. By 6:15, there weren't any parking spots left on Briarwood Lake's clubhouse lot. Residents filled every seat, lined the back wall, even stood outside the windows. Something was different this time, and everyone felt it. Janine Harland, the HOA president, was already at the front of the room, shuffling papers like she had nothing to worry about. She wore her usual navy blazer, and her expression, that polite brittle smile, that looked more like a smirk, if you stared long enough. Beside her, the treasurer and vice president, sat unusually stiff. They knew what Marcus Bell was bringing. Everyone did. Marcus arrived 5 minutes before the gavel dropped. He didn't speak to anyone on his way in, just nodded once at the board, then took his seat, first row, center, a black folder in his lap. Janine tapped the microphone. Let's begin with community updates. First, thank you to those who attended last month's landscaping cleanup. Special thanks to Marcus Bell for pressure washing the park gazebo. The applause was awkward. Marcus didn't clap. He opened the folder. Janine paused, then continued. Next item, discussion of visual compliance policies. There's been confusion around garage visibility and project alignment with community standards. I'd like to clarify. Marcus stood, not loud, just firm. I'd like to speak on that. Janine frowned. This is a board-led update. You'll have time during community comment. This is about the board, he said. And I think the neighborhood deserves to hear it now. The room stirred. Someone in the back said, Let him talk. Another.
Hey.
It's about time. Janine's jaw tensed. Fine, she snapped. 3 minutes. Marcus didn't need 3. He pulled out a stack of photos, color printouts, dated. This is lot 28, he said, holding one up. Fully remodeled garage, visible shelving, no citation. Lot 12, converted into a home gym, equipment in plain sight, still no citation. He laid them across the board's table like playing cards. Lot 7 has a beer fridge, and neon signs, still exempt. Janine opened her mouth to interject. He held up his hand. This isn't about garages, or tools, or aesthetics. This is about power. He pulled out the contract next. 2 years ago, the board passed an amendment, giving itself the right to make aesthetic exceptions for certain homes. The clause wasn't voted on, it wasn't publicly announced, and it was used to approve your sunroom extension. The room gasped. Janine's face twitched. That's a lie. County records, Marcus said, holding up the paperwork, stamped and dated. He let that hang in the air, then stepped back. I was told I couldn't vote, that I missed the registration window. He looked around the room. Anyone else told that? Hands went up, slowly at first, then faster. 7, 11, 15. Marcus nodded. This board has violated its own charter, blocking votes, selectively enforcing policies, funneling decisions through backdoor amendments. And when I tried to speak up, the president of this HOA, called the sheriff, gasps. Janine jumped to her feet. That is an outrageous accusation. Who showed up at my house? Unannounced. In uniform, Marcus said. Anyone want to guess? He turned and gestured toward the back door. Sheriff Dalton stood there, arms crossed, in full uniform. My cousin, Marcus said. And the look on his face when he realized the board used his badge to scare a homeowner, that said everything. Dalton gave a small nod, said nothing, but his presence was enough. Janine's voice shook. This is personal. This is a vendetta. No, said another voice. It was Lydia Wells, from Lot 11, the widow who'd been fined for wind chimes. This is truth. Then another neighbor stood, and another, a young mom, a retired couple, a man with a clipboard full of his own evidence. The room turned. Marcus stepped aside. This isn't just about me, it's about all of us. And what happens when a board forgets it works for the community, not above it? Silence, then applause, louder than anyone expected. Janine didn't slam the gavel, she just sat down, face red, shoulders slumped. The power was gone, and the vote to dissolve the board? Unanimous. The vote to dissolve the HOA board wasn't just symbolic, it triggered a chain reaction. Within 48 hours, the treasurer and vice president both resigned, quietly. No statements, no farewells, just blank nameplates at the next committee sign-in sheet. Janine Harland, however, didn't go quietly. She filed an appeal with the County Oversight Office, claiming procedural errors, mob intimidation, and irreparable harm to her reputation. The Oversight Office rejected her complaint in less than a week, because Marcus Bell had done more than bring photos to the meeting. He'd brought a binder, 47 pages of documentation, screenshots of backdated approvals, timestamps of deleted posts in the HOA portal, evidence of meetings held without quorum, and most damning of all, that quietly amended aesthetic exception clause Janine used to greenlight her own $32,000 sunroom. Worse, the contractor listed on the job was her brother. No competitive bid, no approval trail, just an unchecked invoice filed under community beautification. The county launched an official audit, and the news got out. First it was a blurb in the Briarwood Gazette, HOA president accused of self-dealing, power abuse. Then it hit the local channel, then the regional wire. Suddenly, Janine was no longer feared, she was avoided. The same neighbors, who used to nod politely on the sidewalk now crossed the street. Her inner circle vanished. People unfriended her in real time. Someone even took a screenshot when her name was removed from the HOA website. She tried to spin it, claimed she'd been trying to protect community standards, blamed Marcus for orchestrating a smear campaign. But it was too late, because once you lose trust in a neighborhood like Briarwood Lake, you lose everything. Meanwhile, the HOA committee, now fully volunteer-led, began restoring order. Meetings were open to the public, votes were live-streamed, every bylaw and policy was uploaded to a clean, searchable portal. Marcus didn't run for president, he didn't want the title, but he was offered a new one, compliance chair. He accepted. His first motion? Kill the visibility standard policy. His second? Replace it with a single sentence, garages are meant to be used. It passed unanimously, and just like that, Marcus's workbench, storage wall and project station were officially declared not a problem. He celebrated by installing under-shelf lighting and teaching his neighbor's son how to build a birdhouse. It was poetic. More than that, it was peaceful. The mood across the neighborhood shifted. People spoke more freely. Garage doors stayed open. Kids played chalk hopscotch across driveways. No one dared mark before. Even the community bulletin board came back to life, no longer edited for tone. Lydia Wells brought cookies to the next meeting. The man from Lot 7 offered to repaint the clubhouse sign for free. Someone planted sunflowers in the roundabout median. And the best part, the sheriff never showed up again. Sheriff Dalton did, however, stop by Marcus's house one evening. Off duty, he brought a six-pack and a sheepish grin. "You really flipped the place upside down," he said. "I didn't flip it," Marcus replied. "I just pulled back the curtain." Dalton raised a beer to cousins who don't back down. They drank on the porch as the sun dipped low, neighbors waving as they walked by. And just when Marcus thought the dust had fully settled, a knock came at the door. It was a reporter. "Local station. We're doing a segment on HOA reform," she said. "You're the story people are rooting for." Marcus chuckled. "I'm not a hero. You made people feel safe in their own homes." He didn't answer. He just looked out at the street, at a neighborhood that finally felt like one. A place where you could build something without being punished for it. A place where a garage wasn't a crime scene, it was a canvas. The first thing Marcus Bell did after everything settled was nothing. No social media victory post, no press interviews, no bragging, just a deep breath on a quiet Sunday morning, the smell of sawdust in the air, and the hum of a sander echoing from his open garage. The space looked the same, but it felt different, not because he'd won a battle, but because he no longer had to justify his peace. Across the street, the neighbor with the chalk-drawn driveway waved as her daughter skipped rope barefoot. On the next block, a teenager was repainting their front steps bright blue, something that would have been flagged before. And for the first time in a long time, Briarwood Lake didn't feel watched. It felt alive. The new HOA committee was still finding its rhythm, learning to lead by listening instead of fear. They'd held 3 open meetings, created a community garden fund, and scrapped a dozen old policies that no one had understood, but everyone had feared. No more surprise visits, no more whisper warnings, and no more weaponized authority. As for Janine Harland, she moved out 3 months later, listed her house quietly, took a loss on the sale. Rumor had it she joined a gated community across town, one where she wasn't allowed on the board. No one threw a going-away party, and that was justice, in its own quiet way. Marcus never asked for applause. He just wanted to be left alone. But people didn't forget. When the neighborhood hosted its first community BBQ that summer, someone made him a wooden plaque hand-carved, left anonymously on his porch. Burned into the grain were 6 words. Yes. "Respect is earned, not enforced." He hung it above his tool bench. Later that evening, as the sky turned pink and neighbors lit sparklers in the cul-de-sac, Marcus stood in his garage, watching his street glow, with the kind of light you can't measure in lumens, not artificial, not staged, just earned. Sometimes, the loudest kind of justice is the kind that never has to raise its voice, because when the HOA called the sheriff to intimidate Marcus Bell, they didn't know they'd just given him a badge of his own, the truth, and this time everyone saw.